This is a Suunto Race S, and over the last 6 months, this has become an incredibly popular GPS smartwatch. Now, over the last 3 months, I've been putting this watch to the test on all of my runs, rides, and everything in between, and now I'm ready to share my thoughts after using this watch for 3 months. Let's dive into the review. Now first, a little bit of an introduction to the Suunto Race S. The Suunto Race S is a predecessor to the Suunto Race, which means that it's going to be a similar build to the Suunto Race, but it's going to be a little bit smaller at 45 millimeters. It's going to be a little bit cheaper at $349 US, and it's going to be a little bit faster and a little bit better overall. It's going to have a new and improved heart rate sensor. It's going to be, overall, the interface is just a lot smoother on the Suunto Race S than it was on the Suunto Race. Now, diving into some more specifications, we've got a 50-meter water resistance. Next thing I want to talk about is this beautiful AMOLED touchscreen display that you're going to see right here, and it's going to be a really beautiful display, just like Garmin and Coros. It's going to have a 1.32-inch touchscreen, and along with a dial in the middle, it's also going to have an upper button and a lower button, which will serve as a start and stop or a back button. The watch comes in at a weight of 60 grams, which is a little bit heavier than competitors like the Pace Pro and the 265. However, it's not going to weigh down on your wrist. I've worn this on all my runs, and I haven't really noticed on my wrist. It's not like it's slowing you down, so that's not something that you have to worry about at a 60-gram weight. The watch also gives you the option to have an always-on display, a race to wake, or just off display unless you click a button. Now moving on to the features of this watch. This watch is going to be a pretty standard GPS smartwatch, so it's going to have tons of activity profiles. You're going to be able to do triathlons, running, cycling, anything in between, and it's going to have like 50 plus activities. You can add a ton more in the Suunto Plus store, which I'm going to be talking about more later on in the video. It's also going to have full-blown navigation on this, so at a $349 price point, that is pretty incredible. With this new and improved heart rate sensor, you're going to be able to measure HRV and blood oxygen, and those are going to be two metrics that are going to be pretty important if you are into those sort of health metrics. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is onboard music. It doesn't really have any of that. No onboard music, but you will be able to control music from your smartwatch. Now, this watch will also have multi-band GPS along with a barometer. And if you're worried about the battery life of this watch, I can say that battery life isn't much of a problem with this watch. Especially with activities, you can pretty much change to any settings so you can get tons of battery life out of this, probably more than your current watch. But I have been running for probably an hour every day, and this watch has been pretty close, maybe around, I'd say 25 hours of battery life with the multi-band GPS enabled. Now in daily smartwatch mode, it claims to have up to 90s of battery life, but that's been more like 4 to 5 days for me, especially because of how frequent I'm doing workouts with this and just the overall amount that I play around with this watch and use it. Now, arguably the biggest thing about this watch is the build quality. Now, the bezel is going to be made out of stainless steel, which is very different from other watches like the Coros Pace Pro or the Garmin Forerunner 265. Those watches are both going to be plastic bezels, and it's going to feel really plasticky too. It's not like the Suunto Race S where it actually feels substantial in your hand. It's going to feel like a real premium watch, and as you have it on your wrist, it's going to feel a lot more premium too. I've definitely noticed that compared to my Coros Pace 2, which is really, really plasticky, and now that I look at it, it's just not the same. So if build quality is something that's important to you, this watch is definitely something you should be looking towards. In order to get a titanium version of this watch, you're going to have to pay an extra $100 to get to that $449 price point. In my mind, that's not really worth it since the stainless steel is plenty for most people. And if you look, take a close look at this B-roll that I'm showing on the screen right now, there are really no scratches on this display. And I've been wearing this for 3 months so far, and I've been using it with just 24/7, and I have not noticed any scratching or anything like that on the display. It's going to have a Gorilla Glass display, which means it's very strong and something very similar to what you would have on like an iPhone or an Android. Now, comparing this display to something like the Garmin Forerunner 265, I found this display to be a lot more liquidy and a lot nicer than the Forerunner 265. I had some hands-on time with the Forerunner 265, and the screen just still felt a little plasticky, and it didn't have that premium feel that the Suunto Race S does have. So, as I said earlier, if build quality is something that's important to you, this is going to be built to probably the highest quality that you're going to get in a $350 watch. Now, one thing I want to talk about is the scroll dial. The scroll dial on this watch is something similar that I have with my Coros Pace 2. However, the scroll dial on the Suunto Race S kind of annoys me. And the reason why that is because it's a little harder to turn, so it almost feels as though I need to use both fingers in order to navigate with this watch. It's not like with my Coros where I can just use one finger to scroll through things. Honestly, the scroll dial is pretty stiff compared to watches like the Coros watches or Apple watches. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the Suunto Ecosystem. The Suunto Ecosystem is honestly nothing like what you're going to find on Garmin. Garmin has the whole Connect IQ. They have integrations with all the biggest companies out there, and it's just a whole lot of a smarter ecosystem. However, smaller companies like Suunto and Coros don't really have that ability to be compatible with all of those major companies out there. So you're gonna see the Suunto Race S lacking a lot of the smartwatch features and a lot of the ecosystem that Garmin will have. It's gonna have the Suunto Plus store instead, which is going to basically just a host of different data fields and different watch faces that you can add to this watch at any time you want, which is pretty nice. It's a great way to customize watch faces, and they're always adding new things, which is cool to see. Now, what Suunto is going to have in their ecosystem is the ability to customize data fields, customize activities, customize pretty much everything on your watch, and it's also going to give you the ability to add a route like navigation that can also be synced from Strava, and along with things like adding workouts and structured training to your watch, that can all be synced with some of the biggest platforms out there like Training Peaks. Now, there's also some little things that I found really neat in this watch, like the ability to see how many hours are estimated left on your activity. When you are about to start activity, it'll tell you like estimated 12 hours left before your watch dies. Another thing that is cool is you can actually shortcut your watch. So if you see here, if I hold down the back button, it'll bring me to the settings screen. I have that hardwired to notifications actually. And then if you hold on this top button, it'll enable my flashlight, which is cool to see. Flashlight basically just maxes out the brightness on this watch and turns it into a white screen. And I've actually found that, while it seems like that's a stupid thing, it's actually pretty useful at night without having to take out my phone to get the flashlight out. All right, now sensor accuracy is where things start to go from really good to not so good. And that's sort of where I draw the line between Suunto and its competitors. With the Suunto Race S, I've had honestly absolutely terrible luck with the heart rate sensor. I've had maybe one or two good runs here and there where I'm able to get just like a decent reading for a regular run. However, for anything that is faster or even the easy runs, I've been getting readings of like 200 beats per minute, which just simply isn't realistic when I compare it to my chest-based heart rate strap, which is generally known to be the most accurate way of measurement. I'm getting like 170 on my heart rate strap, but on the watch, it's telling me 200 beats per minute, up to 210 at random times. And it's just been overall pretty poor accuracy. You can see here from the data set, that's from a long run I've done. I did a couple months ago, and you can see here that the watch is just all over the place. The heart rate sensor on my chest makes a lot of sense. That's the Wahoo tracker, but the Suunto Race S has just pretty much been a disappointment in terms of running heart rate accuracy. I've had some better luck on a stationary bike or an elliptical. However, when it comes down to using this for real things like running or cycling, I just have had absolutely no luck. However, on the bright side, there are quite a few people who have had luck out there. I've seen a lot of reviews where people have said that this heart rate sensor is actually pretty good and almost on par with Garmin or Coros. That certainly has not been the case for me, but I'm also really skinny and I have pretty poor luck with optical heart rate sensors. And what that does is not only does it provide inaccurate data for those specific runs, it makes it so that the training data insights on the Suunto app, they just aren't as accurate, and I really just can't rely on any of that data. It's not very usable for me. If I'm looking at data where it said that my easy run was doing 200 beats per minute, of course it's gonna say I'm out of shape. Or if I'm doing an interval workout and it's not catching on to my heart rate, it's saying that my heart rate's like 150 beats per minute, it's gonna think I'm crazy in shape. It's just not the most accurate way to go about this. You're gonna need a chest strap if you don't have good luck with this sensor in order to actually make use of that data that you can find in the Suunto app. Now, taking a little bit of a pivot, we're going to talk about GPS accuracy, and that, unlike the heart rate sensor, has been absolutely phenomenal. Now, I've taken this on quite a few trail runs. I've taken it through the cities of Taipei, and honestly, everything has been great, and I've noticed this is exceptionally better than something like the Coros Pace 2, and this is also a multi-band GPS watch, so it's going to have pretty much the best accuracy you can find out there. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the navigation. I've used navigation on this watch a couple times, just navigating local routes around my neighborhood, and I've tested it on a pretty turny route that has turns all over the place that make absolutely no sense. I was just trying to get a 4-mile hilly loop, so I had to do like a bunch of roundabout things, and this watch was pretty exceptional at directing me. All the directions made sense, it came up at the right times, it was all turning the right direction, and it was able to navigate me home perfectly well. It also had the climb guidance feature, which tells you where the climbs are and what they're going to be facing, so it'll tell you like your progress through each climb. Now, navigation, it's going to have a little bit of shortcoming because it doesn't have the ability to just map anywhere. You're only going to have a base map. You're not going to have actual road names. If I load up the maps right here, you're going to see that it's sort of just an empty map with just, it's gonna have color in the streets, but it's not gonna have exact names of the streets, which is sort of makes it a little bit less useful. Another complaint that I have for the overall usability of this watch is in terms of creating different data pages for watches. Normally you could just customize an activity and just choose which data field you want to swap out and what you want to change to and stuff like that. You could do that all in the watch or in the app, doesn't really matter to me. But the fact that you have to create a completely new activity profile on the Suunto was just really mind-boggling for me, and this was something that I was actually going back and forth with Suunto support, and they honestly didn't have the most useful response. I think they know that this is something that is a pretty big complaint from users and just really big inconvenience. I don't want to have to create a new activity profile every single time I want to just simply change a data field. That just sounds really unreasonable to me, and honestly, it's been such a hassle to have to do that if I want to have different data pages for workout days or different data pages for long run days. I just want to have that all under one activity profile. I don't want to have to change it to like a long run activity profile. That's just honestly just extra time wasted that I really have disliked with this Suunto Race S. Now, time for a conclusion and a bit of a summary of this review. Overall, this review has been pretty positive of the Suunto Race S, and I've really enjoyed using this watch. It feels very premium. It has a lot of adventurous features like navigation over here. However, the biggest shortcoming for me is sort of the Suunto ecosystem along with the heart rate accuracy on this watch. Now, since some people have luck with this heart rate accuracy, it's not as big of a problem, but for most people, it's just not the best experience in terms of heart rate accuracy, and that sort of subtracts from the watch in a bunch of different ways. It's not just for the activity heart rate. It's going to take away things like that advanced Suunto ecosystem that it's supposed to have, that's supposed to be useful, but really just isn't in my case. However, if you're somebody who doesn't really mind that heart rate sensor or is willing to take the risk of not having the best heart rate sensor accuracy, or you're someone who uses a chest strap, this watch is going to be a great option, and it's going to be very comparable to something like the Garmin Forerunner 265 or the Coros Pro, with the main thing being that this watch has navigation, whereas something like the Garmin 265 doesn't, along with the fact that this is going to have a lot more premium of a build quality. So if build quality is something that matters to you, I'd really consider looking into this watch because it just feels incredibly more premium compared to a Garmin and Coros. Honestly, I'm not going to be sure I'm going to be able to go back to my Coros 2 after using this watch for so long and having enjoyed this material so much. If you enjoyed this video or found it useful, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. It really does help support the channel. And with that, thank you all for watching, and ride on.